All right, sorry for the crash Blender decided to bestow upon us. So what I was saying right before we went bye-bye was the amount of spots on her body is some particular frequency, but I want the amount of freckles on her body to be related, but quite a bit more. I did, since we crashed, I decided to kind of group things together and make them look nicer, but this is the exact same skin shader you were looking at a little bit ago. I've just kind of moved everything around a little bit and made it look nicer, as I say. So this spots frequency goes into the scale of this top one, which gives you the spots, but it also goes down into these math nodes, and the output of the one, when we multiply by 10, goes into here, and the one where we multiply by 10 and then add another 1500 goes into here. And so what this ends up doing is making these freckles here happen much more, have many more of them, and so these are actually darker colored freckles, or I should say more yellowish, and these are more pinkish, right? Let's actually so that way we can see the color. And so there are two different colors and two different frequencies of freckles here. On top of that, there's also a couple spots in there, so you end up with a lot of variation where the freckles are, and then you end up with a lot of variation where the spots are, but just less of them, right? And they are related. If I change the number of, if I change the input to this group, if I change the input to this group of the spot frequency, sorry, this top one, then that'll change both the spots and the number of, the amount of freckles, right? So that is how that bit works. These, again, are the same kind of group as mentioned above. It's just a Voronoi texture with a little bit of extra goodness around it. And so that's what all three of these are. Then each one of them goes into a ramp. This color ramp is, the spot is very like reddish, and it looks reddish here, but we're going to mix it and do some multiplying and some other things with it so that in the end it ends up being kind of a dark reddish spot on her skin. And here, oh, by the way, you can see lots of freckles here on her shoulder leading into, there's still freckles here, they're just much less obvious, and there should also be very, very difficult to see but still existent freckles on the top side of her breasts. And so that is important. We want that, what's important about that is just that's how I defined it when I chose this skin texture, right? Lots of freckles here, less freckles here, very few freckles here. Okay, so let's go back to here. So the colors are chosen here with this color ramp. Those get mixed together exactly 50-50, and they come up to here. So what's this thing mixing together? It's mixing together the freckles down here, it's mixing together the spots, and it's mixing together, the amount is dependent on the number of the, how would you call it, strength of the freckles here, because we're pulling the red value out here. And so what this really means is that the more spots you have, the less freckles you have, the more freckles you have, the less spots, which is probably an unintended side effect, or I should say it might be a confusing side effect. For me, it's fine because I don't care about that much control over those. I don't mind that, where her freckles are, the spots are less, and where there are lots of spots, there are fewer freckles. Do not mind that at all. So, but that's what that does there. I mix these two together with that amount of redness. I am changing it a little bit. I take that amount and I modify the brightness by, this is freckle strength, right? So if I have more freckles, then this bit is brighter. If I have less freckles, it's not as bright. So that's the brightness gets changed there, goes into this, and so that just causes these to have a bit of an interplay between them. The final thing that I'm doing is I'm taking the input vertex color of her body, and remember, if I don't specify a vertex color, it's whichever one has the camera. So this is her skin color, this dark skin color. That goes in and gets mixed together, or multiplied together, I'm sorry, with the freckles and spots, which then is the final group output. We're not going to talk about the wrinkles and bumps in any great detail, but just know that I have a separate set of UVs for wrinkles and for bumps, and I kind of set them to whatever I want them to be. For example, her lips, and then I just run them through a bump map, and that goes into the normal output of this. So again, can't talk too much about that. We'd spend too long dealing with it. I guess I can just bring it up and you can kind of look at what that is. So this is the, if I remember right, the bump bit. No, that's the wrinkles. These are the wrinkles, but if I recall correctly, wrinkles and bumps are largely the same. Oop, they are different. All right, so that's what they are. Feel free to do that. But again, like I said, I'm not going to talk about that because it's only tangential to the skin shader, and this is a video that's running quite long. So that is the entire skin shader, and that is what makes these girls look the way they do. So let's take a look. At some point, I had mentioned something about tongue. Her tongue is also shiny, and there we go. There we can see her tongue. Like her lips, the tongue is shiny. So that's the reason why, instead of just picking a different material for one bit, I did that, because it's like I want her tongue to be shiny, I want her lips to be shiny, I want other parts of her to be shiny. So there's like a bunch of shiny bits. Her fingernails and toenails actually are the exact same skin shader. It's not any different than the rest of her. It's just the fingernails and toenails underneath these that I pasted on top are also shiny. Actually, let's hide these fingernails. Fingernails hidden, so we can take a look. Yeah, so you can see here that the fingernail is actually shiny, and that's, like I mentioned, it's not a different texture, or a different material. It's the exact same skin material as her skin, and that way you get the same SSS, you get the same other things. You may not want the same SSS if you're really that much of a stickler for details. You may actually want to model a different material for the fingernails, but for me, just making them shiny was enough. And so I think that'll do it. Thanks for watching.